The Free Agents podcast contains mature themes and adult language. Any discussion of gambling is for entertainment purposes only. Please abide by all laws in your location regarding gambling.
Can we start?
Welcome to the Free Agents Podcast, College Hoops Preview. I'm Joe Smargy, and joining us this week via Skype, we have LJ and Chris Curtis of the Michigan Sports Beat here for our College Hoops Preview, and we are just all fired up for some awesome college action.
It's all about Maple Jordan, the next Michael Jordan, Andrew Wiggins.
Is he the next Michael Jordan, LJ, or is he the next LeBron James? Because that's what people are telling me.
He's going to be Andrew Wiggins. Let's wait and see what this kid becomes. He's got phenomenal skills, but we've only seen those skills in short bursts. We haven't seen him play any kind of real full season against decent competition. The kid, you can watch him on YouTube. He's phenomenally athletic, like LeBron was. He can dunk. He can take people off the hole, and watch his spin moves. His spin moves are phenomenal. And if you just you watch the highlights, he's just amazing, but we have to wait and see. And of course, the guys in the critics are walking around talking about his intensity. Is he intense enough to play at the next level? Blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what a coach is for. A coach is there to instill intensity into a kid and drive him to be better. You can't really tell a lot about a kid when he's 17. Let's wait and see what happens when he gets thrown into a bigger game, which Kansas is going to have a big game coming right out of the block anyway, so we shall see.
Yeah, we will be watching. We have a whole bunch of young freshmen coming in, with all with the sort of recruiting rules and stuff being what they are, and the sort of the 1 year rule and all that. The freshman class is just so pivotal for any team now looking to compete.
There's Kentucky with their 7 guys: Julius Randle, the Harrison twins, James Young, Dakari Johnson, Marcus Lee, Derek Willis. This is going to be a team with a ton of talent, but they don't have anybody veteran, nobody there to solidify the squad, make them good, to make them, how is Calipari going to rally this team? It's going to be the same problem he had last year. He had a bunch of good freshmen, but he didn't have anybody there's no glue to the team. There's no continuity.
I think with Kentucky and their freshmen and even their veterans, one thing that Calipari is very good is neutralizing egos, making sure that his guys are ready to go from the opening tip. They're going to be pretty good. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Kentucky, the preseason #1 in both polls. You got to take that for what it's worth, as well as the fact that John Calipari is just a damn good coach. He's going to have his guys ready to go.
I mean, if you're looking at just Andrew Harrison, James Young, and Julius Randle, that would be a phenomenal team. Then you would just need two guys just to fill in the blanks, but now they're adding 2 awesome freshmen plus, guys that were top recruits from the year before, Cauley Stein and I don't know, Alex Pathres, or however you say his last name. These are 2 kids coming back from the season before, and they're both going to be riding pine behind the freshmen. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, the only thing that everybody's worried about is any kind of continuity in Calipari bringing it all together. But I see Kentucky competing right from jump, and they're going to be interesting. They got great players. And then the opposite of Kentucky is Michigan State, where they bring back, more veteran players and they have more continuity. And people are worrying more about injuries with Michigan State than anything else.
Yeah, with Michigan State, I mean, it's one of those. Basically, this is Tom Izzo's year to do something. He has with Michigan State, he very well could lose 3 to 4 players off the starting lineup to the NBA. You have Appling and Harris who are going to go, Appling and Payne, who are going to definitely go. They're seniors. And then you had Gary Harris, the shooting guard, and then Brandon Dawson, who both very well could end up in the NBA draft as well. And Izzo's going to have to, kind of play his cards right to see if he can get those two to return if they need it. But I sense a major falling off for Michigan State come next year. But this year, definitely their season to compete. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the Final Four again.
Well, like I said, they have the most veteran team with the best players. Mm-hmm. So they're ready. They have the most continuity. They're going to be the ones that understand how to play with each other, that understand a lot of things that a lot of these young teams don't understand.
Yeah,
and they have the chemistry and they have the leadership, and a lot of these teams don't have that. I mean, Duke is a team that is going to have that too. They're bringing back some players from the previous season, and then they're adding Jabari Parker, who I feel is the best player coming into this. Who's the best player right now? If you're looking at potential, then yeah, you can look at the other guys. But Jabari Parker has the most well-rounded game. As every expert has said, he can score inside, mid-range, and from the outside. So this is the guy that Krzyzewski is going to go to in crunch time. This is going to be his player. Yeah, and he's been that crunch time player his whole career. He came up in Chicago and he learned how to play basketball in Chicago. And those Chicago kids are good. Just ask Derrick Rose.
Yeah, no kidding. As far as Duke goes, I mean, it helps with Parker when Parker has arguably one of the best coaches in history when Coach K, on the bench with him. It's, he's going to be good. Duke is going to be good. They're a perennial powerhouse every single year. I expect no different from them this year.
The one question with Duke is their size down low. They got Marshall Plumlee, the last of the Plumlee family, but he's a role player and a nobody. So they don't really have any big kids. They're saying Parker could actually spend time at center, and they play a small ball with him there. So there's going to be some issues there. And then we get to Kansas and Maple Wiggins and the rest of his team. They got Perry Ellis. They got this kid Joel Embiid is a 7-footer. He's raw as hell. He's from Africa, but he's got the potential to be they're actually whispering Hakeem Olajuwon's name when they whisper his name. They're saying the kid can be as good as Hakeem Olajuwon.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. But again, it comes down to Bill Self being able to mesh this group together and work some magic. And I guess everybody thinks Wiggins needs some motivation. They're saying that he lacks intensity. So this is up to Bill Self to motivate Andrew Wiggins and have him show some intensity.
Well, I think when he gets into those bigger those games on the bigger stage, I think you'll see. I think he has it in him. I think you'll see more of that intensity come out.
Well, I'm a big fan. I mean, you've got Wiggins and you've got the next Hakeem Olajuwon on your team. I don't know why anybody would sleep on this Kansas team. This team is going to be right in from the beginning. They're going to they got the big game in the United Center. It's the big matchup right at the beginning of the season. It's Michigan State and Kentucky, and then it's Duke and Kansas. They're playing the big games at the United Center. So these teams are going to be tested right out of the gate, and we're going to see how well they play against top flight competition.
Good test for all four teams, really. I mean, and going back to Kansas, AP has them at number 5. USA Today has them at number 6, and it's going to be, like you said, a big test coming this week, first week of the season. It'll be exciting to see what Kansas, Michigan State, Duke, and even the rest of the top teams have in store for us. It'll be an interesting week.
It's gonna be an awesome night. Tuesday night is gonna be an awesome night of basketball. You're not gonna see this much talent on the court this early in a college basketball season, probably ever. This has never been something that's happened like this. And it's gonna be a lot of fun for fans to watch. But the gamblers are not as high on Kansas either. Hell, they bumped Kansas all the way down in the on the covers.com website. They bumped Kansas all the way down to number 16 because they don't know anything about them, and gamblers don't like unknown things. They really love Duke. They have Duke number 1, and they have Michigan State 3, which I would put them ahead of Louisville. Louisville has some issues with suspensions and injuries and other such stuff. Speaking of Louisville, they're the national champions. They're defending their crown.
Yeah, the USA Today poll I have here has them ranked at 3rd. And, you know, they're saying here like, oh, don't go to sleep on Louisville. But I'm inclined to agree more with you, LJ. I think they've got some significant issues, that I don't know if they can overcome this year.
One thing about Louisville that is not really talked about is the whole Conference 3 alignment thing. You know, them being in the AAC this year, it's basically a one and done year for them in a new conference. And when you have Bohannon who had the suspension for academic reasons, you still have a very talented roster that Rick Pitino's put together, and I really don't see them falling off the grid too much. At worst case scenario, come March, they're going to be looking at possibly a 3 seed. I don't see them falling off the table too much under Rick Pitino, with or without Bohannon.
Well, I think some of that's going to hinge on how competitive UConn is this year, and they're a team that it's kind of hard to put the finger on how good they're going to be. Mm-hmm. They could, if they're better than expected and they really are able to just come back to hoops here with us, it might make life really hard for Louisville.
Well, I'm going to say it right now. UConn is ready and poised to make a run at the national title. The odds right now for them right now are 75-1 to win it all. Mm-hmm. And they bring in back an elite backcourt of Shabazz Napier and Ryan Boatwright, who have played together for 3 years, who know how to play really well, know how to play intense defense. They're really good. And UConn's bringing in this kid Kenton Facey, who just got declared eligible. And then they got this kid, Amita Brima, another kid from Africa, who has looked good in exhibition play, and he's a big kid, and they need him. They're going to need this kid to step up and be a front court presence, because they have an elite backcourt and they need some sort of front court presence. They can't just continue to rely on Tyler Olander and his massive pimple problem. Tyler Olander is just bad for HD television. He has a serious acne problem. I don't mean to pick on the kid, but it's bad. If you watch him on television, you're just like, take him. They could need some of that. One of them commercials there that what's her name had. Those late night fucking whatever.
The level of detail in HD programming is almost too good, especially in a live event where guys don't have makeup and you just see all this. They're just people who have regular kind of skin and normal problems, and
yeah.
And this is why we do an audio podcast. So
right,
and it's not just. And it's not just UConn.
No.
In that new AA whatever conference it is, it's the Memphis Tigers are there too. Mm-hmm. And Memphis has a good team. They have a top 10 team, they're saying.
Yeah, Memphis is a team that I often forget about.
Got to keep an eye out for Memphis. When they lost Calipari as a coach, they didn't lose the ability to recruit. They can still recruit. They can still get players to come in and play. They play well. They don't have they have an early test too. November 19th, they play Oklahoma State. So we're going to know a lot about Memphis right then and there. And then they have Florida, and then they have, of course, Louisville and UConn, because those are conference games. Mm-hmm. But this could be, I like the new conference. The teams play each other twice because they don't have a lot of teams.
Right.
So they're playing UConn and Louisville twice, and everybody's playing each other twice.
They'll get to know each other very, very well.
This is a conference that's going to test. That's going to test its best teams, which I like. And Memphis is 13, I guess, in the power rankings at ESPN. So you got UConn, you got Memphis, and you got Louisville in that conference. So Louisville will be tested.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really argue with that. The one thing that I know the gamblers are saying is Michael Dixon, because he's eligible, he makes that Memphis backcourt one of the best in the country, if it's not already. So
yeah, and the gamblers like him in number 7 for their power rankings. So yeah, we cannot complain about that. Now the gamblers got to be leery about this new rule. They're enforcing the hand checking rule, which is going to increase scoring.
Yes.
But it's going to be some ugly games early on. These games are not going to be as free-flowing as they want them to be until the players get used to these new rules. Early on, you're going to see a lot of free throws. means more possessions, which means more scoring, but it's not going to be pretty scoring.
No.
Well, the one thing with every rule change in every sport is it takes an adjustment period for not just the players, but also the referees. It's going to be interesting to see how well they call this right off the hop. So, I mean, and that could very well play into your, very well play into the more possessions, more free throws, more scoring thing. But it'll take a few games for everybody to kind of get used to it, and if not the whole season.
For the first 2 months of the season, bet the over in every game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is the lock of the century right there, LJ. I think you're dead on.
until Vegas starts to adjust the lines, you just bet the over. Mm-hmm. I was looking on the Cover's website. There's a lot of college basketball that doesn't get booked because they don't know enough about the teams. The experts in Vegas can't book the bets because they don't know enough about the teams. But you can sneak in some bets against these guys. They have to offer a lot of the big name teams. They have to offer action in order to just make themselves a viable entity. So keep an eye on. There's a lot of value in gambling college basketball early in the season. First 2 months of the season, elite teams are trying to get used to their new surroundings, their new players, and all that stuff. So Kentucky's going to have some big lines, and you can actually bet against Kentucky early on because the freshmen aren't going to mesh as well. I'd start betting with them come February, but bet against them until then. I don't think they'll be able to cover. They'll probably win some games, but they'll probably win some ugly games.
Yeah, well, that's a hot tip right there, LJ. I like the rule change, and I think it will help with scoring. I also like that they're also going to make it much harder to draw a charge, which will also improve scoring, I think. And just make the games a lot more exciting, especially in a league where you have like the zone defense where it can really bog the game down. And just can make for some really boring basketball at times, depending on which teams are on the floor.
Jimmy Boeheim zone defense.
Yeah.
That's the famous one in Syracuse. It's the one everybody talks about. And if he can't draw charges like he used to, it will make his scheme a little different this year.
Yeah, I have to wonder, especially when we get to the playoffs, how, we don't talk a lot about defense in college hoops, but it is a factor, especially going into the going into the tournament. And we've seen over the years, more recently, a lot of the championship teams have been some of the better defenses in college. So how do you think, will that affect coaching and sort of strategy, at that point in the year?
They're going to have to adjust once they see what happens. Yeah. No coach can, like Jim Boeheim doesn't know how they're going to call the charge yet until he's in it. Then he'll have to adjust his defense accordingly.
Well, it will make for some really interesting games, and if we can figure out who's playing in what conference. And,
I don't like this whole conference. You know what? I'm just lost. I'm just looking around. I'm like, well, now this conference, but then this team, like Louisville, is moving next year. They're one and done in the conference, and now the Big East has got a bunch of just, I swear they got a bunch of Catholic schools. They picked up Creighton and Butler, and all these religious schools moved to the Big East.
Yep.
And the Big East has what everybody calls the best college player. This kid Doug McDermott from Creighton. This is the kid that everybody laughs and says he's been in college for 40 years. But he's been there for 4 years. He's an excellent scorer in college, but they say his game is not going to translate to the next level. So he's the best non next level player is this kid McDermott. Did you guys catch this kid in the tournament last year? He was good.
Yeah, I did catch a little bit of him. I didn't get to watch a ton of the tournament last year. I was still rolling burritos for a living, so that was, we didn't do many shows back in like March last year. But that's going to be different this year. We're going to have a whole bunch of coverage. So I did catch some, and he is he's pretty impressive kid to watch. And so I have a lot of hope for him. I think the Big East is actually one of the better conferences now. I'm looking at the list. I'm just looking at the teams, and all these teams it should be a fairly competitive conference. Not all of these teams obviously are the biggest names, but they're all, many of them. There's just a lot of good programs here overall. You have
they got
Marquette.
some really good programs. They were trying to get VCU too, but
Yeah.
Shaka Smart didn't want anything to do with it. But they got it. They got Xavier. They ended up getting Butler. They got Creighton. They got some.
Yeah.
They got some really good mid-major type schools that are consistently competitive. I mean, when was the last time Xavier's not been competitive? My sleeper team, I like LSU as a sleeper coming out of the SEC. They're starting 2 seniors, 2 juniors, and an elite freshman in Jarrell Martin. And I'm a big fan of that continuity thing. Plus, they have an excellent coach by the name of Johnny Jones. He's been a recruiting master down there in LSU. He's been keeping all the good talent in Louisiana, and that hadn't been a thing. And he's a good in-game coach. So just in the back of your minds, they're sitting outside the top 25 right now as just one of those teams receiving votes. But I'd keep an eye on LSU. They're going to be playing in a tough conference with Florida and Kentucky, but they're gonna make some noise this year. So who else are we looking at? Anybody else stand out? Michigan, what's going on?
Yeah, what is going on in Michigan?
Well, Michigan's a very deep team, and there's no doubt about that. The issue with Michigan is health, and it all starts with preseason All-American Mitch McGary, who has lower back issues, quote unquote. They didn't really go into specifics, but essentially, I mean, he is a game changer. And if they, for whatever reason, lose him, then you could be looking at, a 4 or 5 seed in the Big Ten as opposed to a possible Big Ten title. So, but it is a very deep team in Michigan. They have a couple of newcomers, Derek Walton and Zach Irvin. Won't see as much immediate impact from Zach Irvin as we will from Derek Walton. Walton is going to be the one playing the point to start with. And he's filling shoes that Trey Burke left, but in a different way. Burke was definitely more of a scoring point guard as opposed to Walton, who is more of a pass first. And when you have the shooters that Michigan has, it's not so much a bad thing having a pass first point guard. So it'll be interesting to see if he can have the impact that everyone's thinking he will have, Walton, coming into this. And the other,
but will he have as many fun games against Aaron Kraft as Trey Burke did? Trey Burke and Aaron Kraft matchups were just awesome to watch last year.
Completely agree. And well, that remains to be seen. I mean, no one's seen a lot of this Derek Walton kid, but I mean, when you look at Walton, you look at Burke, 2 very different players, but Walton can shoot the ball. I mean, I know preseason doesn't matter much, but I mean, he's shooting better than 50% from 3 in the 2 preseason games, and shooting better than 70% overall. So, I mean, that's pretty good in itself. He can definitely shoot it if he needs to, but he's definitely more of a passer first.
And what about Glenn Robinson III? I hear he's ready to break out this year.
Well, he's been good defensively. His big question mark was the jump shot. And he's definitely, he's improved the mechanics on his jump shot. So, and that's what we've seen through the couple of preseason games that Michigan's played, the one against Wayne State, which is at Detroit College. And, he looked pretty good, in the video we've seen from that. So we'll see. He's a definite wild card for this team. But again, it all goes back to Mitch McGary. If he can stay healthy, Michigan's looking at a possible Big Ten title in a 1 or 2 seed. But if not, then, they could be bounced out of the NCAA tournament fairly quickly.
Yeah, they don't have much in the way of size down low without McGary down there. Mm-hmm. And when you're going up against a team like Arizona that's got a bunch of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", 7-footers that all can run and jump and dunk, you're gonna need somebody down low that understands how to defend and can grab some rebounds and just a big body, because McGary's not a little guy. 6'10", pushing over 250. He can compete against all those Arizona horses. Arizona's gonna have Aaron Gordon, the next Dominique Wilkins, they say. That's a big thing that's some big shoes to fill.
Absolutely.
Dominique was a scorer like very few people could score. Dominique went basket for basket against Larry Bird. Now you're asking Aaron Gordon to do that? I don't know. We haven't seen much of this kid yet. They're saying that he's a tweener. I don't know if he's going to be able to play small forward or power forward come the next level. But enjoy him while he's in college, because he's going to be bigger, stronger, and faster than 99.9% of the rest of the NCAA.
Yeah, he needs to enjoy it while he's there, because, I mean, like you said, once he gets to the NBA, it's a totally different game.
So what else we got going on? We talked about Maple Jordan. We talked about Memphis. Talked about UConn. Anybody else on your radar, Joe Smart?
I think we covered a lot of them. I was kind of looking at some of the list of, some of these, the potential Cinderella teams, and we covered two of them already. I think, people kind of look, I know LSU's a, generally popular team and program, but, this year, they could be considered maybe a sort of a Cinderella story if they go all the way. And we mentioned Creighton too, I believe.
Yeah.
And, so there's a couple, other teams that I'm actually kind of interested to see what Harvard does this year. They seem to have the promise.
Go an Ivy League on us.
Yeah, well, Ivy League teams got to win too sometimes.
Joe Smart is not off there because one of the experts at ESPN, when they were picking their Final Four, put Harvard in there.
Yeah, and I think you can totally. I mean, it's these Cinderella things. It's just like the power rankings preseason. I mean, how much does it really mean? We don't know exactly what the teams will look like going down the stretch, but they seem like a team that was last year was poised to end up finishing better than they did, and they had they lost a couple of key players going into that season, sort of at the last minute. And this year it seems like they've sort of filled in. So I think they're a team to look out for. I think, not so much a Cinderella, but like I said, I think UConn could be sort of under the radar for a lot of people this year. I think they're going to be really good. But yeah, Harvard's definitely a team to keep an eye on. I wish Frenchie had been able to make it because Frenchie follows a lot of the West Coast action. Mm-hmm. Mostly because it's late action where like he can get out of work and get action on a game and watch it at midnight, because they're still playing. Mm-hmm. But you have some teams out there like teams like Fresno State and let's see here. What else do we have? Oh, I totally lost it. But anyway, so you got some teams out there like Fresno State who could surprise, but I mean it's so hard, like we said, it's just so hard to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's
UCLA
only November.
That list too.
Yeah, UCLA. Thank you. I think that's what I was trying to reach for. Thank you, Chris.
UCLA has got Steve Alford. Remember the guard from Indiana from back in the day? He is taking over as coach because the program was a mess under Ben Howland. Let's admit it. They didn't have any control over the team. Howland was an excellent recruiter, but he was a horrible coach. And the talent that came through that school really should have won a lot more titles than it did, and should have been in a lot more Final Fours. Mm-hmm. And now they're bringing in Alford, and Alford has done a good job recruiting. And UCLA could be a contender this year. They could be knocking at the door, but nobody is picking them to finish big or anything like that.
Yeah, Gamblers have 17. In their top 25, so.
Oh, well then, maybe, they're going to play smarter. But they do have, they got talent. What they had is Howland was able to bring in talent, but nobody to put it together.
Right.
If Alford can come in and put it together and bring some of that Bobby Knight gravitas with him, maybe it'll work.
There you go. Yeah, if not this year, then we should definitely look forward to seeing some stuff from UCLA in the coming couple of years. With that new class that like you said, Howland brought in.
St. John's, the Gamblers are talking about. Jakar Sampson and St. John's.
They put St. John's over Creighton.
Not sure I agree with that totally, but
yeah,
that's an old school play. Remember when St. John's used to be good?
Yeah,
year in and year out.
Oh yeah,
with Lou Carnesecca and his sweaters. That was back when the Big East was a real conference instead of a weird little conference now. And then they split it off. Everybody left, and that just frustrates me as an old school NCAA basketball fan who came up on the Big East. That was the conference.
And now
they've destroyed it. They've destroyed what was great. The history, that's all we got now is the history of the Syracuse, UConn.
Here's a stat for you.
The Georgetowns. These were major matchups at Madison Square Garden that got national play.
Yeah, just to
I
put
don't
the
know
whole,
if they're going to be able to recapture any of that with these new conferences.
yeah, just to put the whole Big East collapse into perspective. Think about it like this: Big East sent 9 teams to the NCAA tournament last year, and this year they're projected to only send probably 4 or 5 at most. The only 2 teams that have returned are Georgetown and I believe Marquette is the other one.
Yeah, the
Yes.
ACC stole Pittsburgh and Syracuse, and now then they're going to get Louisville. And UConn is sitting in this other. I mean, UConn just got left kind of out in the dark there. They needed a conference, and the ACC said, "No, we got too many people now."
Yeah.
And the Big Ten was like, "Well, no, we don't want you," and then they kind of just were left out in the dark. And it was a shame. I don't know what happened there. I guess because of all that was going on with the academic stuff, nobody wanted to touch them. And now this year, I guess Kevin Ollie has assigned a life coach to his players, and that encourages them to go to class and stays on them about doing homework and everything else. And now they're going to be academically better. They've all been academically better since Kevin Ollie took over.
They had not one kid end up on academic probation or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of these conferences are ridiculous as you go through. Like at least some of these are like, at least there's some locality to them, like the Missouri Valley Conference, and it's a bunch of teams that are actually in that area and not just like all over the place. But all the big major conferences that we care about, I mean, the teams aren't even close to each other, in a lot of cases. So we have students, we have the athletes traveling a lot, and just, it's a grind.
Yeah, how about this? ACC, take a look at Maryland. And then at some point, they have to travel to Miami, Florida. You have,
Well, the fun thing is, it's you got to have Boston College that travels down to Florida. Then you got Notre Dame that travels from the Midwest to go to Florida and to go to New England.
Yep.
Then you have, the rest
Syracuse
of these teams, ACC. Yeah, Syracuse has to travel to the Midwest and but they were doing that with the Big East. Notre Dame was doing that with the Big East. So Notre Dame has always been a thorn in everyone's side.
Yeah.
They really should have just been in the Big Ten and just gotten over with it and just joined the Midwest Conference, which is the Big Ten, and just have been done with it. Instead, they wanted to be different and difficult and greedy.
None of this, it doesn't make geographic sense. I mean, Atlantic Coast Conference, I understand. Atlantic Coast.
Yeah.
So Boston College makes sense because Boston's on the Atlantic Ocean. Georgia Tech makes sense because Georgia borders the Atlantic Ocean. Miami makes sense. And all the North Carolina teams make sense. All those teams, the original ACC, makes sense. But then when you add Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, it doesn't make any sense.
You talk about travel issues for the AAC just for that 1 year. I mean, you have a lot of travel going on from the Midwest to the East Coast as well. You take a look at who do they have? Houston. They have to travel to Florida multiple times. They have to travel to Connecticut, and it's a long. So it's going to be a long year.
There's 2 Texas teams in that school.
Yeah.
They're SMU and Houston. Then you have 1 New England team and Connecticut. And then Midwest, you got Cincinnati. You could put Louisville kind of Midwest, Southwest type or Southeast type of thing. This is, and Rutgers, I mean, that's, UConn and Rutgers are the only geographically close. They're close to each other. Temple, they're in Pennsylvania. And they're all over the place, really.
Yeah, the only one that seems to have it right is the Pac-12. As far as the distance for games, I mean, other than the fact that they're traveling north to south, south to north, but that's not the worst thing that could happen. So
you gotta love the Big 12. Why did they take West Virginia? All right, you got all these other teams that are down there, Texas, Oklahoma, Iowa. They're all right in that one area, and then you throw West Virginia in there.
Yeah,
for no reason. I mean, that makes no sense at all. And like we were saying, the Big East is all over the place. They got Butler, they got DePaul, which is out by Chicago. Then they have Georgetown, which Georgetown really belongs in the ACC. That they don't have a football team, so they can't join there.
Right.
That's really that. And then Providence is a New England team. St. John's and Seton Hall, New York, New Jersey, Villanova's Pennsylvania, Xavier, Cincinnati. And it's ridiculous. They didn't do these things geographically. They did them because of money.
They wonder why the kids are having academic issues in some of the conferences. I mean, they're traveling more often than not, to these games. And other than the fact they can do their homework on the plane, but I mean, more often than not, they're probably sleeping.
Another interesting note, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on UMass again this year. We were kind of hoping they would sneak in, and they're disappointing, and that's just, that could happen again this year.
Chaz Williams is back.
Yeah, Chaz Williams is back, and they have some guys, and if they can sort of push forward, then, they could be a team that could slip in. And interestingly enough, the UMass Lowell team, which is just a satellite of UMass, their basketball team, the Riverhawks, have also made the move into Division I. They're in the America East Conference. Mm-hmm. So it's possible, not this year probably, but at some point in our future, who knows how far in the future, we could have UMass facing UMass for a championship or somewhere in the bracket. To me, that's
I think it would be
crazy.
More somewhere in the bracket, but it'd be funny if they got like an 8-9 game.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy would that be?
Or even a play-in game. They're both like pretty, not good, but they get that play-in game or some nonsense. It'd be funny.
That would be an interesting scenario.
The problem I have with UMass is they didn't build on the momentum that Calipari left behind. Bruiser didn't build on that momentum. He wasn't as good a recruiter as Calipari was.
No.
And once Bruiser Flint just drove that program into the ground, nobody was able to bring it back.
That's exactly it. And I think, the administration sort of lost some of their stomach for sort of pushing into athletics too. And then especially once all the...
You mean for cheating?
Yeah, well, especially once all that stuff came out, about Calipari and all that. I don't know that the administrators and the people who, run UMass were necessarily as high on trying to develop the basketball program into a, big national program.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of corruption that went on there. The stories coming out of UMass from back in the early 90s about Marcus Camby and how he had the top floor of one of the dorms to himself. And Chris, you're not aware of how the what the UMass campus is, but we are because it's local.
Yeah.
But there's a dorm here called Southwest. It's just a big dorm in the southwest spot on the Cameron. And it's like a really nice spot. Well, they gave Marcus Camby literally the top floor of that dorm was his. And they just allowed him to live there by himself.
Yep.
When he was a player there.
Going out of this topic and back into another one we were talking about earlier, Michigan. Apparently, Mitch McGary is not going to be playing in the season opener. I just found something that reiterated that he is not going to be playing in the season opener tonight, and he will be. He claims he wants to be back full strength by December 3rd against Duke. So it will, but
that will impact their early record.
Beeline has even been quoted as saying that if he has to, he'll shut him down for the entire non-conference schedule, which could very well be interesting, and it could play a big part in the Michigan season, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that could be tough.
Well, they won't be as highly ranked coming into the tournament if they don't win some of these games. But Smarch, Michigan opens up with UMass Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm well aware of that fact. So that'll be an interesting game to watch. Now, I don't think the UMass Lowell team is as good as I don't think they're as good as the UMass Amherst team, and they're definitely not as good as Michigan.
I'm not an upset alert, but it's still something to watch.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
I think the Michigan women's team would give the UMass Lowell team a run.
Yeah, they might.
And then, they're playing South Carolina State. So if McGary's sitting out the first two games of the season, he could play in a wheelchair and they'd still beat those two teams. And then they have a tough spot against Iowa State. They're a good team and one of those teams you need to keep an eye on. They got a good coach and good players. But then they're playing Long Beach State and Coppin State. So yeah, sitting them out until the Duke game, they have one game that they could potentially lose against Iowa State. Other than that, they should roll over every one of these teams.
Absolutely. There's
so
no doubt about
McGary out until they play Duke is actually probably just fine.
Yep. And we'll see what happens come the Duke game, and then after the Duke game, if he is healthy and stays healthy, then Michigan has a shot. If he doesn't, then
The Michigan has a tough non-conference schedule. Duke and Arizona are just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about, and then within their own conference, they got Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. So,
Big Ten's no slouch this year. That's for sure.
Big Ten ain't nothing to fuck with.
That's right, the Big Ten.
They are a good conference. Jesus Christ, this is some good. There's going to be some good basketball. You're lucky you got them local.
Yeah, can follow a lot of them. That's for sure. It'll be a good season. I'm excited for it.
I wonder what the line is for UMass Lowell. It's probably like Michigan minus 50.
It's probably off the board, dude. I don't even know. Let's look.
Yeah.
Give me like 2
Who would
seconds.
take any action on UMass Lowell? This is the first game they're playing as a Division I team, and they have to travel to Michigan tonight to do it. Those poor kids.
Yeah, no kidding. Talk about a step up.
Glenn Robinson III is just going to have a field day. He might score 30 tonight.
Mm-hmm. Derek Walton's first game is for Michigan. I mean, he's gonna find Glenn Robinson all night. Yeah, Robinson's gonna abuse them down low. There's no doubt about that.
I want to look at their roster, see if they got any height on this team. They got a 6'10" sophomore. But other than that, you're looking at no player over 6'7" other than the 6'10" kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're going to get
Glenn Robinson III is going to have a field day.
Yep.
Those poor kids. Oh well.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered. I think that we pretty much covered all the interesting, all the good NCAA hoops topics here today. I think obviously there's teams we didn't talk about. But there's a lot of teams
who's in your Final Four? Hold on.
Okay, all right. Let's wrap it up. We got to do the big prediction so we can.
All right. We'll start. I'm going to go first.
Yep.
And I'm tempted to go chalk, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put UConn in there, and then I'm going to put Michigan State because I like the veteran leadership. I like Duke, and then let's have some fun and throw. Who we gonna throw in there? Florida. I think Billy Donovan, once he gets those suspensions in order, he's got an elite class and he knows how to win. So let's go that way.
Yeah. What do you think, Smarge?
Well, I like Duke. And I got some chalk. I think UConn's, for Final Four, it's just so hard to say what they're going to do this year. But they may be there. I'm still pretty high on Harvard, to be honest. And they may be the big surprise.
Cinderella team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my Cinderella team. And, I don't know. Man, Florida is good. It's really hard. This is the hardest part of the show is disagreeing with LJ because he's usually right. Mm-hmm. But I'll throw Florida in there too, I think.
Yeah. I'm thinking I'm thinking we'll see Kentucky there. I'm thinking we'll see Michigan State there, the top two in both polls. But I like, you mentioned them earlier. I'm not sure which one of you did, Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is going to be my sleeper this year. And then I think Kansas gets in too.
Oh, I like that pick, Chris. I like that.
See, I'm off the Kentucky bandwagon. I just don't like Calipari's not a good coach, not a good in-game coach. And that's where you're going to see problems. He doesn't mesh his players as well together. Last year we saw that. There were just some serious deficiencies in his coaching. There's that team with all that talent last year, even when they lost Maryland Knowles, they should not have been as bad as they were. They should not have been an NIT team.
Yep,
and you have the NIT team. The NIT champion from last year is now the number one team in the country. You got some issues where if that's the case, I just don't think that Calipari is good enough to bring it all together to make this team a winner.
I'll disagree with you to that point. I think Calipari's got redemption on his mind. I really think Kentucky bounces back for a good year this year, and they definitely find their way out of the NIT field and into the NCAA tournament on a big level.
I just don't like it. You see Calipari on TV, he always seems so nice. Mm-hmm. He just seems like a really nice person. So picking against him, I feel like you're mean. He just seems so nice, and he says smart things. He says this he has a very good perspective on how he looks at things, and I appreciate about him. But he was very good at cheating and recruiting and players' mothers got houses and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it's true. He really comes across as like the opposite of Rick Pitino. When you hear him talk, he sounds like a nice guy and like just a good dude. And then you hear Rick Pitino talk, and I don't know what it is. I think it's just his accent or something, and he always sounds like he's scheming or conniving something.
And I just don't think you're a Celtics fan, and I just think Celtics fans have never forgiven him for what he did here.
No, we can't.
Yeah.
And they lost Chauncey Billups because of him. Chauncey Billups got traded, and Chauncey developed into a superstar that led teams to championships.
Yeah. Hoping he'll lead my Pistons to one here soon.
Well,
I don't think he'll be around that long, though.
All right. Well, then, folks, we'll see you for our regularly scheduled podcast next week.
Yeah, if you like the NCAA preview, if you're a new listener, just check us out on freeagentspodcast.com or Free Agents Podcast on Facebook. You can search us there and subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever you use to listen to your favorite radio content. And we'll be here next week with your regular show, and we'll talk about NCAA, we'll talk about NBA and everything else. So there you go. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a good one.
Later.